Now, when news breaks on your mobile, you're likely to get the latest from our CNA app, watch us on TV as you are now, or even listen to CNA 938. And there have been many developments in recent months, from record-breaking COE prices to rising inflation. Now, while the headlines does give us a snapshot of what's going on, some topics are more complex. And this is where our Heart of the Matter podcast fills that gap. Now, to tell us a lot more about this, let's meet the new host, Steven Chia. Hi, Steven.
Hey,
welcome.
Jill.
Nice to see you with us. Now, the viewers are used to seeing you on Talking Point, obviously. Tell us, what has been the transition like to hosting a TV show to a podcast?
Yeah, it's funny, but it's kind of like same, but different, right? I'm still talking a lot. In fact, I'm talking more in the podcast. So it is pretty new, this format of doing a podcast. And I think the main difference, of course, is that with TV, you can see there are visuals to go along with the story. Whereas with the podcast, we are really describing an issue. But at the same time, with TV, it tends to be so fleeting because very often due to time and duration, our sound bites are really short, our interviews are all really short. Whereas with the podcast, we get to go quite deep. In fact, we spend 20 to 30 minutes on just one issue. And you know what that means. I mean, with compared to TV time, this is eternity, right? So in that respect, I think it's been a great learning experience, but highly enjoyable as well, because I've got all these great people on the show who are sharing their thoughts on many different issues. And I think the main difference is that we are looking at issues that we feel are really relevant to Singapore, issues that we feel will resonate with people living in the country here. I mean, it can vary from, you mentioned some of them, COEs, which everyone jumped when they went at 114,000, to inflation. We even had scams. We had an ex-former scammer who spent time in jail, who's now turned over a new leaf, come on the show to spill the beans, quite literally, on what they do and how they get us all hooked. So it's been really eye-opening and a great, wonderful, fun experience so far.
You've just mentioned a whole myriad of topics that we could be unpacking that are so relevant, and strike a chord at all our hearts these days. But I also understand that the episode on Singapore's social compact that made its rounds on social media. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that one came about because it's National Day, Singapore's birthday. And when they told me we're doing something on Singapore's social compact, I was like, okay, sounds pretty boring. Just the term social compact, we think, okay. Then we got a bunch of guests in, Professor Tommy Koh being one of them, who's known to be quite vocal about his thoughts. And again, the conversation started fairly civil, and we got to talking about, I guess, what really affects Singaporeans. And he really said it as it is, I guess, to say that to some extent he called us all snobs. He painted a picture of how we often look down on those who do more manual labor and how we treat them in a different way. And I guess it really has to do with, at the same time, these are the people who are building our homes and helping build our city, but yet our regard for them is quite different. So it is these kind of opinions and alternative views that we have, including we had a student, an SMU student, who shared her thoughts on how she sees the world moving forward when she enters the workforce, what are the things she would like to hear as well. In fact, we've got a soundbite from that, so maybe we'll play it for you guys.
I was recently reminded of this incident during my internship in MFA, where we had a chance to meet Professor Tommy Koh. You picked up the list of interns and you pointed out only 2 of the 20-odd interns there lived in HDBs. And it was such a jarring experience because it's not something we noticed. It's very easy to make the assumption that because of our meritocratic system, everyone at the table has earned their spot. In fact, they probably have to some extent, but this idea of meritocracy allows us to overlook a lot of things.
So, Prof. Koh, why did you do that with the interns?
With every cohort of interns, I try to urge my colleagues in MFA that we must not forget 2 important principles: inclusivity and diversity. Because when the Singapore delegation is at the UN, people look at us and say, oh, this is Singapore.
Lots to chew on just in that soundbite itself. But, podcasts aren't new in themselves. But, when you look at a news podcast like this, how crucial is it a component or a segment in our entire news ecosystem?
I think it's all part of the larger conversation. If we want to evolve and move forward as a country, we've got the news, we hear the facts, we hear the politicians speaking, then we got to break it down. Then we got to talk. These are the kind of chats you and I would have over a coffee somewhere. These are the kind of chats that very often don't get much airtime. With a podcast, we can do that. We can spill the beans. We can look at, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? And not worry about it, because the whole idea, I think, from this podcast is we really want to get to heart of the matter, heart of the issue, but at the same time get to what's in the hearts of all of us, what we're thinking about, how we are feeling and responding to certain issues, and have our say to air an opinion which may be too far-flung, but yet at the same time it says, if I can dream about that, maybe somewhere along the way, that's the mark we're aiming for.
And I tell you what, tomorrow's headline might be in that discussion somewhere as well. You never know.
Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Steve, for coming by. I've been just unpacking our CNA podcast, Heart of the Matter, with the host, Steven Chia, who's also the presenter of Talking Point.